Man, what's up, Doc? If you guys know that saying, you're already one step ahead of me. Got the appropriate attire on today. That's right, we got the Looney Tunes squad. And most of these characters right here were actually voiced after the gentleman that we are going to be vlogging about today, Mr. Mel Blanc. That's right, born Melvin Jerome Blanc in San Francisco, California. Moved here to Oregon and paved his way to fame by voicing all your favorite Looney Tune characters. Let's go check out around Portland. Check out some of Mel's stomping grounds. Tell you a little bit more of history of Mel and how the whole Looney Tunes voice acting came about. We're gonna check out his former high school where he graduated from, but today is going to be incredibly fun. If you're like me and love Looney Tunes, it's gonna be a fun one, so stay tuned. I don't want to show their sign too because it's the old school hotel, and I'm not sure when this place was actually officially built, but I do like their signage. As you can see, there's a giant complex here, the 6th Avenue Motel, but directly behind here would have been the childhood home to Mr. Mel Blanc. That's right, all the guys, well, all the creators from the Warner Brothers are highly known, but the voices behind the characters are what makes the cartoon so good, in my opinion. And what's cool about Mel growing up in this little part of the town is back in the day it was very diverse. So there was a ton of different people moving to Portland at the time, and Mel would just kind of hang out around this area and would learn all kinds of different languages. Now there was also a store that was close by here, but right about here where this wall sits now and this part of the hotel motel complex is where actually Mel's house, his father Frederick and his mother Ava would have stayed. Back in 1915 is when Mel moved here first to this location right here, and in all the old school shots that I wasn't able to find really much of, it just shows these houses, which you can see are all kind of old style homes built, you know, probably in the early 1900s, maybe 1920, 30, something like that. But right here, right before this hotel was placed and before this retaining wall was here, would have been the childhood home to Mr. Mel Blanc. That's right. They moved here from San Francisco, and Mel attended Cooch Middle School, which he was a winner of a swimming competition at a very young age. You can see some of these houses around here are that like Victorian style. So I'm guessing whatever house sat here, well, Mel's house was probably that same style. You can see all these three in a row are kind of that same style, with the front end here having the little lip over the front door. So I'm guessing that's probably the facade of the house would have stayed right here. And then in 1920, Mel and his folks moved downtown right off of 5th. We're gonna creep down there next, and then we're also gonna go to his high school. And as the story goes, it says Mel hung out at a Yiddish grocery store and was able to pick up all kinds of different languages. Hanging out with different folks from around Portland really helped. And you can hear, like I said before, his voices and everything were really cultured. You know, he was around a lot of different people at the time, and so he picked up a diverse dialect of languages that he would later use in his cartoons. So basically living right here in Southwest Portland really helped Mel pave the way for his voice work later in his cartoons. And on the exact address is 225.5 Sherman Street. So if you were to pull it up on Google Maps, it basically pinpoints right about here. This would have been 22.5 and then a half. I'm not sure if the house was maybe split into 2 sections or not, but right about here, in this exact location, is where Mel grew up. Pretty cool. And I'm not sure, I could be giving the wrong info. I'm not 100% positive, but right here, this was also a dry cleaners for many years. And I've heard conflicting stories, but this also could have been the market where Mel practiced those voices and kind of hung out. It said the market was really close to where he lived. Now that could have been the location downtown. That could also have been right here off of Southwest Sherman, but you can see this has always been kind of a business. It's not necessarily a residential. So living just right here and being able to walk across the street, who knows, that could have been the grocery store right there that Mel hung out in, or possibly maybe one downtown. But for me, that would make sense. The market being here, his house being right about here, he could have just walked right across the street and hung out. Either way, it's pretty cool to think that some of my favorite cartoon characters of all time were voiced by that man. And he just lived right here. That is just so cool to me. All right, let's head down to Mel's high school next. We'll talk a little bit more about what happened there. And all right, before we go to the school, the high school that Mel graduated from, I want to take you guys here to KGW Channel 8. This is our national, well, this is our local, rather, newscast here in Portland, Oregon. If you guys can see the big satellite dishes back there. But right here, a lot has changed since Mel got his first gig. But right here, KGW is where Mel got his very first job singing and doing some voice acting work right here at 1501 Southwest Jefferson. The KGW was Mel's very first kind of job, really, paid job. And I can't think of the gal's name that had him on. I will have to edit it in. I believe it was the Aunt Janae's show. They featured Mel for, I think it was a good 20 minutes singing and doing voice work for her show on KGW, which later on helped Mel do other radio work. This is basically the place that he would come to go live on radio. Okay, so I just hit the call box and talked to the very nice receptionist here at KGW. Unfortunately, they're not letting anybody into the building, but as I was talking to her, I noticed right behind their reception desk here is a bunch of old-timey pictures. And if I can get the lens to zoom in, check it out. There he is right there. That is so cool. Amongst other famous folks here. But there he is, Mel Blanc with the KGW mic. He was always known to do some kind of like little funny faces too as people were taking his picture. There's a couple that I found online that are really silly. But there he is right there, and I love the fact that they still honor him with that big picture there, right here at the main offices at KGW. So cool to me that all this stuff is within really a walking distance of each other. The history behind one of my all-time favorite voice people, but just his personality in general. If you guys ever get bored and you want to check out some Mel Blanks interviews, he did an interview with David Letterman. I think it was back in like the late 80s, right before he passed. Unfortunately, he passed in 1989. Another funny story, well, kind of not funny, just interesting. Well, yeah, it's kind of funny too, is I believe it was in '61, Mel got into a terrible car wreck, and he basically almost died. He was put out, but he loved working and he loved his character so much that he actually did like over 100 Flintstone episodes, or maybe not that many, but he did almost like an entire season of Barney Rubble for the Flintstones on his back. And then all the other voice work that he would get while he was injured, he basically did everything laying down because he was injured. They would hang the mic over his bed, and basically he would just continue to do the voice work from home. So a man that worked incredibly hard, not to mention all the other things that he accomplished here in Portland, Oregon, working for KGW and the Hoot Owls, which was a nationally syndicated radio program that Mel worked on, which kind of, well, it really did help pave his path into getting into Jack Benny and people like that eventually gave him his job, and introduced him to people that would give him his role later with Warner Brothers. And in fact, his very first role with them would have been the voice for Porky Pig. And Porky Pig, if you guys know, really did sound like a pig, and he would, you know, he would mumble and things like that, but Mel basically got all that different dialect, and the way that he performed those characters was from being involved around so many people at a young age and being cultured. And I give Portland a lot of that credit. I believe that Portland's always been a very well-diverse area, very welcoming to different people and different nationalities. So Mel actually went and studied pigs. He went to a pig farm, and for like, you know, a couple days he actually went in with the pigs. Said he got completely dirty doing it and was able to pick up how a pig should sound. And that was kind of how he got into his voice characterizations, is he just, you know, he just hung around and learned how to talk like them. And they say he had over 1,000 different voices he could do. So I just love those stories, and I love those interviews, and he just seems like such a genuinely cool guy. And not to mention voicing some of my favorite, if not my favorite, cartoon characters. You guys know I'm a huge Simpsons fan, but if it wasn't for Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes and Mel Blanc and everybody paving the way for them, there would be no Flintstones, there would be no Jetsons, there would be no Simpsons. Mel actually voiced another character that I didn't know of until I started going down the rabbit hole. He did Heathcliff. So, and he also did, oh, what was this? The Caveman. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, because I got so much other information. But I will insert pictures of pretty much most of the characters that Mel performed and really mastered. Some of his final role was actually in the 1989, one of the best movies I love still to this day was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Mel did Bugs, Daffy, and Porky, and those were his final voice roles. So I think it's pretty cool that he was included in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You know, all those years later, Warner Brothers and them had really paved the way for the way they do their cell production and voice characters. He also was quoted saying that they would have him do the voices first, and then they would actually draw how they wanted them to sound. So they would take Mel's dialect and use it, record it, all of his characters, all of his funny noises, and then they would actually draw to it. So I never knew that part. Anyways, we're getting very close to Lincoln High School, where Mel graduated. Let's creep up here and check it out. We'll talk to you a little bit more about what happened there. And it's just been such a great day so far. I love doing this vlog. This is probably one of my favorite ones I've done so far, just because the tie-ins with Portland and one of my favorite people, really. All right, so we made it to our next location here. We are at the Lincoln High School. As you can see, they are busy with a ton of construction. Do you guys know, are they going to tear down the old school? Are they? That's what I thought. It's got a lot of history. That's too bad. Oh, look, here's the pictures of the new school right here. Wow, $242 million investment. But I believe it needed it for sure, but I believe it was the oldest high school in Oregon as well, so a lot of history. Kind of unfortunate that they're going to demolish the old brick building up here. But if it's not a safe structure anymore and things like that, then I totally understand. But I hope that they salvage some of the history. When they built this newer section here and extended it out past the sidewalk, they actually covered up the Bart Simpson etching that was there, because Matt Groening actually attended Lincoln High School as well. I believe he was the class of '74. But we're gonna creep up here and take a look at the old Lincoln, where Mel would have traveled to from his home state, from his home to the old Lincoln right here, which I've been very fortunate to meet Mr. Bailey, a teacher here that was resembled, well, Mr. Burns was resembled after. And here is the old entrance where Mel would have walked right through those doors, right into the school. They've got it all painted here still. And right through these doors is where Mel would have went right into his classroom. And by the looks of it and the sounds of it, this won't be here very much longer. You can see off to the far right there. Yep, Mel Blanc, Matt Groening, Elliott Smith, probably a few more. I think Peter Jacobson, the golfer. Ton of folks here throughout the years. This school really did help pave the path for a lot of very talented folks. And as you walk out the main doors here, you can see where the new school's going to sit. So definitely a lot bigger. Now I'm not sure if they will demolish this entire building or not. But this is the hallways where Mel would have practiced his voices of Woody Woodpecker. A lot of the teachers and students throughout the years remembered him walking through the hallways, which at the time they said really did echo, and they could hear Mel practicing his voices right here at the Lincoln High School. That is so cool to me. Mel moved in and out of Portland between 1932 and 1936. But in 1935, he actually came back from Hollywood to Portland. And in 37, a gentleman by the name of Leon, now I'm probably going to say this wrong, but Leon Schlitzner invited Mel to do the cartoon voiceover for Porky Pig. That was his very first official Warner Brothers cartoon. This would have been the school that he decided to actually change his name at as well. For years, it was Melvin Jerome Blank, B-L-A-N-K. And one of his teachers here actually told him it'd probably be better if you changed your name. You might get a little bit more people to take you serious with a last name like Blank. So he took away the K and added the C to make it pronounce a little different. Kind of just a creative thing that he did. Melvin actually graduated here as well. And unfortunately we can't get inside because I believe this part of the school is now closed. They have been for a while because of everything that's been happening, but with the construction of the new building and this building kind of being not utilized, there's really no one here. I was hoping to maybe get in and see if there was any pictures or placard of him here as well. And I'm noticing these duck footprints. Is it rabbit season or duck season? Oh, and there's even a pig. Not Porky, but I think it's Peppa. Peppa Pig. That's so funny. That's so ironic that Mel Blanc, the guy that voiced Porky Pig, and then there's a Peppa Pig right here. That is so funny to me. I love these artwork that they do all over town, and check it out, they got this orange cat here. Almost looks like it could be Heathcliff. On 3030 Southwest 2nd, and this is the exact location that Mel Blanc learned to play violin. This was a, well, let's get up here and get a better look, and then I'll tell you guys a little bit more about it. But Mel Blanc learned to play guitar, or not guitar, but violin right here. This is now a school, the Cedarwood Wardolph School. But back in the day, this was a place that a lot of Jewish people could come to and basically find placement here in Portland. And the building is pretty much the same all these years later. What was really cool about this is Mel attended this for all kinds of music. He learned to play violin here and ended up touring with a band later on. This building was built in 1910, if you can believe it, is now a school. But for years this was a place for Jewish refugees to come and learn the ways of living. It was basically a housing complex for Jewish immigrants. And on the 50th year anniversary in 1949, Mel Blanc actually came back here and was honored. He was an honorary board member in 1966. So 50 years later, Mel actually came back here and accepted the award. I wasn't able to find any shots of him actually accepting the award, but if you can only imagine, oh, thanks guys, no worries. If you can only imagine Mel walking right in through those doors. Like I said, now it's a school, but pretty cool to think that all these years later this building still resides here. Later on, Mel led an 11-piece orchestra, which you know, at that age, at like, I think it was like 11 or 12, he was basically the orchestrator for all that. So a lot of musical talent, which you could hear a lot in his Warner Brothers voices throughout the years. They would have Bugs and a lot of other characters kind of kind of sing and stuff, and so his influences by staying at and hanging out at the grocery store and being around different cultures at a young age kind of helped paved his voice work and his singing, his musically inclined singing. So you can kind of tell on some of the old Looney Tunes where Bugs and them are kind of like at an opera, or there's like basically a ton of Looney Tunes where they would sing and stuff, and you can really hear that in Mel's voice, that he was trained not only for, you know, his voice talents, but his musical as well. And it just looks so cool right now with the sun peeking through. Love it. So they're kind of conducting school here, so I didn't want to be rude or not let anybody know what I'm doing, but as soon as I started telling them that Mel went here, they're, oh yeah, we know. So if you can see here, neighborhood house built by the National Council of Jewish Women, Portland, Oregon section, 1910, and this was placed on the National Register of Historic Landmarks July 10th of 1979. So cool to think Mel came right through these doors at one point. Walking past the Yam Hill Pub. Though he's got a ton of stickers on their door here. So check this out right away, you guys. To tie into everything, got like a girl Bugs Bunny. Man, what's up, Dak? A ton of other stickers too, but that caught my eye right away. It ties in right for today. That's so cool. Oh, that's right. I almost forgot. Happy birthday, Mel. That's right. May 30th. Your birthday. Love you guys. Creeper out for now. Peace.